Have you ever lost something so important that it felt like a thread inside you had snapped? Not an object, not just a person, not a specific opportunity, but the feeling that along with it, you lost a part of yourself. And the hardest part isn't even the loss itself. The hardest part is what comes after it. Silence. And the question that keeps coming back. Why? Why now? Why me? Why when I tried so hard to hold on? If you're watching this video and something resonates with you, then you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to tell you, don't worry, everything will be fine. I know how that sounds when the pain is still raw. I'm not going to rush you to get up and move on. Sometimes moving on is the last thing you can do right now. Today, I want to talk to you honestly, not as a motivational speaker, not as someone who has all the answers, but as a woman who has also experienced loss, who sat in silence, replaying the same thoughts over and over, trying to understand at what point everything went wrong. Losses rarely come beautifully. Most often, they come mundane, without warning, without dramatic music, just one phrase, one conversation, one evening after which you suddenly realize something has ended. And the world, strangely enough, did not stop. It continued to live, but you know. I remember that feeling well, when you wake up in the morning and forget for a second, and then the memory comes back, and it's like a heavy curtain falls inside you. You get up, do the usual things, smile, reply to messages, and no one sees that something is slowly settling inside you. The most insidious thing about loss is that it never takes just one thing. It pulls out everything you've been hiding for years. Fears, doubts, questions you ask yourself, the very thoughts you pushed away because now is not the time. And at some point, you're left alone with yourself, without your usual roles, without support, without explanations, and you get the feeling that life has made a mistake, as if it didn't happen to you, as if you did everything right and still lost. I thought about this for a long time, about why the pain of loss sometimes seems unbearable, and over time I realized one important thing. We almost never lose just the thing or person itself. We lose the meaning we have invested in them. We don't lose the person, we lose the version of ourselves that we were when we were with that person. We don't lose our job, we lose the sense of significance, stability, and usefulness. We don't lose the relationship, we lose the version of ourselves that we were when we were with that person. And this is where it really hurts, because sometimes you can get something back. Getting yourself back is much more difficult. I know how tempting it is at times like this to find someone to blame. Circumstances, people, yourself. Going over the options. What if I had said something different then? What if I hadn't let go? What if I had been more patient? We can live with these what ifs for years, and they slowly eat at us from the inside. I want you to know one important thing, very quietly, without loud words. You didn't lose it because you weren't good enough, not because you didn't try, and not because there's something wrong with you. Sometimes we lose the very things we hold on to most tightly because they have ceased to be a place of growth. They have become a place of habit, a place of fear, a place where we held on more than we lived. I'm not saying this based on some sudden realization. I'm saying this from experience. There were times when I clung to things and people so tightly that it felt like I couldn't exist without them. And when it all fell apart, it felt like I was falling apart too. But over time, I began to notice a strange pattern. After each loss, there was silence, frightening silence, empty. But it was in this silence that my own voice appeared for the first time. Not the voice of expectations, not the voice of other people's hopes, but my own. And maybe you are in this silence right now. Maybe you don't see the meaning in it yet. And that's okay. You don't have to understand everything right away. Some things only make sense when the pain is no longer acute. I don't want you to accept or let go of anything right now. I want you to just allow yourself to be honest, to say, yes, I'm hurting. Yes, I've lost something. Yes, I don't know what to do next. This is not weakness. This is the point from which true recovery begins. Sometimes, loss is not the end. It is the moment when life takes away what we were hiding from ourselves. And then, we'll talk about it more deeply. About how to live through pain without getting stuck in it. About the small steps that don't look like success, but bring you back to yourself. About how loss gradually births a new foundation, not external, but internal. When you stay in this silence, at first it seems hostile, that it's oppressive, that there's too much emptiness in it. After all, we don't know how to be without support. From childhood, we are taught to hold on to something, to people, to plans, to stability, to understandable roles. A good daughter, a reliable partner, a person who has everything under control. And when something disappears, it seems like you disappear too. I remember once catching myself thinking, I no longer know who I am without this, without the familiar us, without a script that was at least outlined in general terms. And that was scarier than the loss itself, because loss is a fact, and uncertainty is an abyss. At times like these, we often make the same mistake. We try to fill the void as quickly as possible, with new relationships, new goals, new activities, noise, constant busyness, anything to avoid hearing ourselves, anything to not be alone with the question, what now? I did that too. I thought that if I was busy enough, strong enough, together enough, the pain would go away. But it didn't go away. It just went deeper. And from time to time, it reminded me of it, with a random phrase, music, a familiar smell, a moment when you suddenly catch yourself breathing shallowly, as if you were afraid to breathe too deeply.
And one day, I realized another important thing. The pain of loss does not need to be overcome. It needs to be lived through. Not removed, not suppressed, not outgrown, but lived through, step by step, day by day, sometimes going back, sometimes getting stuck, sometimes crying again for what you thought you had already let go of. We are often frightened by the word stuck, but to be honest, it is much more dangerous not to get stuck, but to run away from yourself too soon. Because everything we run away from catches up with us later, in other people, in other situations, in the same feelings, only under a different name. I want to share with you one simple but very important observation. Loss almost always reveals what has long needed attention. Sometimes we don't live our own lives. Sometimes we settle for less because we are afraid of being left with nothing. Sometimes we hold on to relationships that have long since ceased to be alive, but still give us the illusion of security. And when it collapses, it seems that life has taken away the last thing we had, but in fact, it took away what could no longer withstand the truth. I'm not saying it's easy to accept. There are losses that cannot be justified. There is pain that does not immediately become a gift or a lesson, and it shouldn't. Some things only make sense with distance, sometimes years later. I often get messages from people who write, "It's been 2 years and I still feel it." And you know what I think? That's normal. We don't have to fit into other people's timelines. Pain doesn't have a calendar. The heart doesn't have deadlines. But there is one thing that gradually begins to change, even if you don't notice it. You start to breathe a little more freely. You start to catch yourself laughing, not out of politeness, but genuinely. You start to notice that the world is still here, not the same as before, but alive. And at some point, a question arises. Quiet, cautious, without pressure. What is important to me now? Not for someone else, not because it's the right thing to do, but specifically for you. For a long time, I couldn't answer it. It seemed to me that if I started thinking about the future, I would betray the past, betray what was important, betray my feelings. But over time, I realized that moving on doesn't mean devaluing what was. It means stopping living only for that. There is one simple practice that helped me during the most difficult periods. I am sharing it not as a universal solution, but as a quiet guide. I asked myself just one question a day. What will bring me back to myself today, even if only by 1%? Not to happiness, not to success, but to myself. Sometimes it was a warm cup of tea in silence. Sometimes it was a walk without my phone. Sometimes it was an honest conversation. Sometimes it was tears that I finally allowed myself to cry. Small things, almost imperceptible, but it is from these things that a new foundation is gradually built. Because the biggest mistake is to wait for your old life to return. It won't come back, and that's not a tragedy, it's a fact. We don't go back. We either get stuck in the past or slowly, painfully, but still move forward, already different. And here, I want to tell you one more important thing. Loss does not make you weaker, it makes you deeper. It's just that this depth feels like emptiness at first. You begin to feel people differently. You hear words differently. You no longer cling to the superficial. You intuitively gravitate towards the honest, towards the real, towards that which no requires pretense. And perhaps that is why, after suffering losses, we become more selective. We no longer want to waste ourselves on things that do not resonate with us. We no longer want to live on automatic pilot, because once automatic mode already led us to pain. I can't promise you that everything will be perfect. Life doesn't work that way. But I can say for sure that if you allow yourself to walk this path honestly, without running away from the pain or getting stuck in it forever, you will come out of it with something very valuable: yourself. Sometimes we lose not because we made a mistake, but because we grew up. It's just that growth rarely looks beautiful in the moment. More often than not, it looks like ruins. And if you're among those ruins right now, you're not broken. You're in the process of becoming a version of yourself that no longer settles for half measures, that no longer lives up to other people's expectations, that knows how to be with itself even in silence. You didn't lose it by accident, not because you were inadequate, but because life sometimes takes away old forms to make room for something more real. And someday, not right away, you will look back not with pain, but with quiet understanding, without speeches of gratitude, without loud conclusions, just with the feeling, yes, it was hard, but that's where I started to come back to myself. If you've listened to this point, then you already have strength inside you, not ostentatious, not loud, but real, the kind that doesn't shout but endures. And maybe right now, that's enough.
And when you begin to feel this inner silence, you realize that it is not your enemy at all. It is not a void that needs to be filled urgently. It is space to breathe, to reflect, to have an honest conversation with yourself. I often caught myself being afraid to stay in this space for too long. It seemed that if I lingered, it would swallow me up. But over time, I realized that this is where the answers that no one else can give me are born. I want to share a little story with you. Once, I lost a job that seemed to be my whole life. At that moment, my world turned upside down, and it seemed that I no longer had anything to lean on. I tried to fill the void with new projects, socializing with people, endless tasks. But the more I tried to escape, the deeper my anxiety became. And only when I allowed myself to sit at home in silence, doing nothing, start keeping a diary, and simply observe my thoughts, did I feel for the first time that something was changing inside me. In small steps, almost imperceptibly, a sense of control and inner presence returned. There is another life hack that I constantly use in such moments. When you lose something important, it often seems that the whole world is against you. But try taking a piece of paper and writing down 3 things you can do for yourself today. Not for work, not for other people, not for external results, just for yourself. It could be a walk, hot tea, your favorite music, a short meditation. When you take at least one such step, you begin to understand that the world has not taken everything from you. There are small islands of strength, and they are always nearby. I remember another moment when I realized that loss is not the end, but a transformation. My friend and I were sitting on the roof, watching the sunset and discussing our relationships with people. She said, "Sometimes people leave, but not because they are bad. They leave so that you can see your true self." That was when I first realized that there is a lesson hidden in every loss, but not in the form of a moral lesson. It comes gently, almost imperceptibly, through pain, through time, through small discoveries about yourself. And here's what I want to say right now. Loss is not a sentence. It doesn't break you if you're willing to look at it honestly. If you allow yourself to feel your emotions, to live through them, to take small steps towards yourself, to regain control over your inner world, a feeling of strength gradually emerges. Not external strength that you need to demonstrate to others, but internal, quiet, almost imperceptible, but incredibly stable strength. And you know what's amazing? When you start walking this path, your relationship with the world begins to change. You no longer cling to people who drag you down. You stop living according to other people's scripts. You choose honesty with yourself and those around you, and that's when true freedom appears. Not loud, not fabulous, but quiet, everyday freedom that you feel in your every movement, in every glance, in every breath. I want you to remember one thing. Loss is not accidental. It comes when something in your life needs to change, even if it seems terribly unfair at the moment. It takes away the old to make room for the new. Not immediately, not easily, but surely. And if you can live this path honestly, step by step, without pressure and without haste, you will emerge from it with an amazing gift, your true self. And even if it seems now that you have lost everything, remember, inside you there are already islands of strength that no one can take away. You are capable of more than you think. Your pain is proof that you have lived, that you have felt, that you have loved, and that is what makes you stronger than any external circumstances.